this intentional space. And sometimes you don't own the space, but you own the moment. And thinking about the ways you can come into these spaces that you can't control all the time, but take what you can, something we can always take to heart. Um, that was the biggest thing, is figuring out a way their folks can get together. Because then when you start thinking about these intentional spaces for queer and trans plus people, the most common one is a bar. Enough to even have that space, but typically that's where it'll start. And even the limiting, because think about addiction and thinking about our youth and thinking about people just want a spot to get a resource or
Mhm.
learn something, or those such valuable moments of connection with folks. So you're like, oh, there are people like me out here and thriving. And if it's only in that bar kind of setting, I think it's just, not that it's not important, but I think it cuts off so much that could be happening.
When I was in high school, um, which is not that long ago, I do have to keep stressing that. But when I was in high school, it was rural Ontario. And I lived about 40 minutes from the nearest city, which is Belleville, if anyone's familiar with it. Um, but I had a good friend who was a man in his mid to late 30s, and his partner, he was married, and they would come and pick me up, drive me to the gay youth club in Belleville, and that's where I built connections with some of the adults that were volunteering there, and other youth who were there. And it was the once a month opportunity to be queer entirely. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
it's so unbelievably freeing. And I thank my parents every day for giving me that opportunity, and also Rob for facilitating as well. But I cannot stress enough, and I'm sure I mean, I can see it in your face, like you know what I mean, like that, the emotional impact. And when I think about the horrific stats around the loneliness crisis, around disproportionate rates of um, depression, anxiety, and the extremes of that I'm not going to get into, this can really be an incredible antidote to that. For those who are listening, what words would you use to encourage them to come and attend some of these events that you're putting on, or to organize their own?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is any anxiety or nervousness will be outweighed by the community and the strength that you feel in that. And it can be hard to try something new or try a new spot. But if you take that moment, especially thinking about creating that intentional space yourself within an established space, taking on some of that power, which helps inform that and being like, what can I control here to make sure the community builds? And it's so helpful when you feel like you belong. And we do. And it's about taking back some of those moments, really.
Well, I sincerely hope that folks in New Brunswick check you out, Chroma, CHROMA, and the website is chromanb, all one word, .ca. I really implore folks to go and check out. I've had a wonderful time chatting with you.
Right now, the one thing I want to leave folks with is feel power within the world, things are busy, things can be scary. Um, Knowing community around even when you don't necessarily see it or feel it. And
not to mention the physical benefits of it. And then for beyond high school, we are seeing sort of different streams that are developing. For example, the Greenhouse Innovation Lab at the Unity College at University of Waterloo, their teams are innovating right now on things like, well, they're doing a lot of the different SDGs currently at Greenhouse. So they're innovating on the Sustainable Development Goals currently.
Yes.
Yeah. So right now they're innovating on food waste. So we have now university age youth who are working with some of our nurture teams, the high school age youth, and some of our high school age youth are actually participating in these greenhouse innovation projects, and they're innovating on problem solving on how to do things like capture some of the opportunity of food waste at schools and start building soil with it right on site.
Right. And then, because it's now being researched at a university level, is there some hope of adoption in the commercial agriculture sector?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sort of this style of regenerative agriculture, permaculture, is definitely making waves on the larger agricultural world. So moving more into a system that is regenerative is something that a lot of larger scale agricultural companies are working towards. There's no current, as I understand, regulatory body for regenerative agriculture at the moment in Canada, like there is with organic, but that provides some benefits as well, because there's so many different things that you can do depending on the site that you're on and the opportunities that that site provides. So yeah, we are seeing regenerative agriculture really taking off for good reason, not to mention like one of the main ones with ecosystem repair, of course, is the repair of the soil. And when what we know about the amount of carbon that can be stored within the soil is huge.
Yeah,
So the benefit there for all of us is pretty vast.
Yeah. You said, you were talking about different sites. The school program, does that take place on the school grounds, or is there another agricultural plot that they travel to make this happen?
Well, we did actually have an awesome partnership with Steckley Heritage Farm this fall. So we had a lot of our youth teams go out there, and we were running programming out there this fall. But all of the gardens that Nurture supports right now are all school gardens. Okay. So the schools themselves are running them. There's some really great high schools in Waterloo region right now running green industries programs. And those students and those classes are growing the school gardens. They're growing food and learning how to do that. But the biggest issue with school gardens that we're trying to address with the Nurture program, there's two main ones. The first one is the summer break. Yeah. So, you can plant these big gardens, but then there's 2 months of the year where you're at prime growing season and everyone leaves. So the Nurture teams come in and they fill that gap. And then the other part of it is teacher turnover. So a lot of schools that don't have a dedicated program to their garden spaces, like a lot of our elementary schools in the region, you have a teacher champion at those schools usually, who are just passionate. They're amazing folks who are really see the benefit of having gardens at the school. But when you have the turnover of that teacher, a lot of times those school gardens, the gardens themselves will collapse. So what we do with the Nurture program is also provide some oversight. So we provide training to the teachers, resources to the teachers, which we're building out more and more. This is just our second year that we've actually been running. We've been growing pretty quickly. But that oversight, we've already seen the benefit of providing, one teacher to the next. They're still going to maintain that garden because they have that external support, as well as the schools who have those dedicated programs. They're saying, wow, we have so much more capacity now to ramp these programs up because of the Nurture teams over the summer break. So instead of just having gardens in schools in Waterloo region as an educational opportunity for youth to learn about food, we're actually now starting to be able to think about food production at schools. So what does it mean for our youth to be growing food that then feeds them again? And especially in light of COVID and a lot of the cafeterias closing down and still not really reopening in a lot of our schools in the region, we see this as a really cool opportunity to how do we actually start providing healthy access or access to healthy food at schools that is youth-driven, youth-led.
Yeah. Is this intended also to address food precarity, people who can't necessarily afford the good nutritious food and end up not getting the most nutritious food, but just the cheapest food?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
How does that work into this program?
Yeah, so we have a really cool partnership with Seeds of Diversity's Youth and Food Systems. They've been an integral part of the Nurture program and how successful we've been. And they run some really awesome programming themselves, one of them being a youth-led market program. So the youth-led markets that Youth and Food Systems run map out with public health where in Waterloo Region we're having more of our food deserts or our food swamps, which is another really interesting term. So a desert, obviously, where like food, we're lacking food, right? You can imagine that. But a food swamp is a term I just learned this year, actually. And that's more of like you have access to food, but imagine yourself like sinking in this like unhealthy food environment, right? So they've mapped out the areas in our region where we're seeing the most amount of these situations happening, and then these youth teams are setting up these low-cost markets in those communities, in those spaces, and they're gleaning food from local farms as well as from our nurture gardens. All of our food over the summer break goes into those programs.
Very good.
Yeah.
Do the students that are participating, do they get to take home some of the spoils for themselves?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our first goal. And then of course when there's the students actually at the school, we're really hoping that those gardens can be feeding the youth at the schools for really affordable or for free. And we have some really cool ideas right now coming out of the youth about how that might happen at schools.
You said you've got a nurture team that takes over during the summer months. How big is this team?
Well, there's usually about 4 to 5 youth, but we sort of create the team size based on the garden size.
Okay.
And then those youth teams have the opportunity to have a lot of autonomy in those garden spaces over the summer. So they really hand the gardens over to them, and then we provide mentorship streams. So we have a mentor in the garden with them every week, and we're currently right now have a call out to the community, to any gardeners in the community who want to volunteer with these youth teams. We're asking for volunteers to be mentors in the garden with them, to show up for 2 hours every week to help them set priorities and figure out next tasks and do some problem solving with them. But then these youth, it's their space. And it was really amazing last year. We were, saying like, what else could we do in these spaces other than growing food? Like, what else do you see is happening? And some of the teams were doing some amazing projects of, putting down compost or mulch and establishing some raspberry beds or putting in new garden beds. And so it's been really cool when you give youth the opportunity to make a difference and to see the impact they make. They've been really taking that on.
This would be a good time to give your contact information. How do people get involved?
Yeah, so they can find out about us at the Smart Waterloo Region Innovation Lab website. So it's www.swril, it's spelled a little funny, .ca/nurture. Or they can just Google Nurture. We've got an Instagram page as well. It's nurture_WR for Waterloo Region. And those are all great ways to reach out and find out more.
That's great. You said you've been at this for about 2 years?
Yeah.
How did the Nurture organization come about? I mean, what was the aha moment that said, we need this?
Right. Well, like I said at the beginning, this is totally a youth concept. So the youth actually at the Greenhouse Innovation Lab were ideating on these issues of food access for youth. Right now, for example, Cambridge Food Bank currently has, they told me a few weeks ago, they have a stat where 33% of their users right now at the Cambridge Food Bank are under the age of 18, which is major. And those are just the ones getting out to the food bank. So we know we have a lot of hungry children and youth in Waterloo Region currently. And the youth see that. They see their friends and their neighbors in those situations. So they're ideating, what are we going to do about it? What can we do about it? And this is their idea.
Right. And how did Nurture get into the Civic Hub?
Yeah, well, I got invited to come in and speak at the podcast, which I was really excited. And then also Doug Jones from the Waterloo Region Community Garden Network. He was like, you guys should connect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now that you're in the Civic Hub, have you had use of the facilities yet? Have you had meetings there? Have you not yet?
Not yet. No, I'm excited to make use of them. I've only been a member for a short period of time with Nurture, but I've been following the Civic Hub activities for a long time, and I really like the work that you all do.
There's a lot of good stuff that comes into and comes out of the Civic Hub. Just recently, for example, there was a community dinner, and I can see having some of the proceeds from the Nurture Gardens coming out to be used for a community dinner. That would be a nice synergy of two different organizations coming together and making stuff happen at the Civic Hub.
Yep, I love that idea.
Yeah. What is it that you need the most? What is it that you're lacking in the nurture teams?
Well, right now, what we need the most are community volunteers to fill those mentorship roles for the summer. We had an ambitious goal last year of having 10 youth teams out in 10 different schools, and it went amazingly well. And this year, now we're having almost 20 teams. So we've got almost 20 schools that have asked for our support, that have gardens already. And so we've got the funds now to pay the youth the stipends,
Oh, good.
which will, as the program grows, be another area where we're looking for support. But currently, we would love to have folks who are in those neighborhoods who have experienced gardening come out to those schools on a regular basis and meet those youth teams and see them through that July and August period where they're getting to tend those gardens.
So it's really just a 2-month commitment over the summer, once a week, every day? How often does this have to be happening? How often do the volunteers have to be out at the gardens?
So for the volunteer mentors, it's just 2 hours a week. We ask it for it to be on a consistent basis. So if it's Tuesday morning from 8 to 10, then it's every Tuesday morning. And folks can volunteer to be garden mentors with a team of people just to make sure that there's somebody to cover if someone needs to go away. That's totally fine. And we can help, fold people into teams as well. So this just 2 hours a week for the mentors, and then the youth are going to be in the gardens about 8 to 10 hours a week. And what was really amazing that we saw last year is they had these sort of minimum hours that we asked them to be in the gardens for, and a lot of them exceeded that and stayed in those gardens for far longer, which is pretty cool to have those good feeling spaces.
As a city boy, I don't know a rake from a shovel. So what sort of mentorship is provided there? Will I learn about planting seeds? What happens if I plant the seeds upside down, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, for those who are volunteering, we hope that they have some gardening experience in a veggie garden and with flowers. The youth themselves, we're going to be training. So we're going to be doing that in April and May for the most part. We've got some good leadership training for our garden leaders. And then the growers themselves will learn about how to seed. The schools, we're helping them create garden maps and planting and harvesting schedules this year. So the youth will have those resources to learn off of. So they'll know, what's planted here. Okay, these are the radishes. These are about when you should be looking to harvest those radishes. And then the mentors can be with them in the garden every week to sort of checking in on those things. I personally will have a call with all of the garden leads every week. So we'll have those check-ins. And we also use a Discord chat, which worked really well last year because they were always posting questions and sharing with other youth teams. So a lot of the youth were answering each other's questions as well and seeing each other's work in the gardens.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do provide training for the youth.
Good. What happens in the winter? I mean, this winter has been pretty wimpy, and it looks like the crocuses are coming up already. Yeah. So I guess you're getting an early start on the growing season. But what happens when there's deep snow on the ground? What does Nurture do then?
Mm-hmm. So what we do in the off season is we work with the youth to do the food forest designs. So this is our long game. We're growing out these annual veggie systems while also allowing the youth to start designing and stepping out step by step these perennial systems around it. And because we have youth teams now in these gardens over the summer break, it's really easy for schools to start growing their food production capacity. So this winter we have 3 teams. We're designing for Rockaway Elementary School, Resurrection High School, and Eastwood Public School. And those teams are learning about permaculture design, so regenerative styles of design. And permaculture is a really cool style of design where we not only think about how do we take care of each other in permaculture design, so what does it mean to design a space that has food, but also is like a welcoming space for each other, is like a needed space on the schoolyard for, people to gather, to feel safe. Maybe it's to feel protected from the wind